The presenting sponsor of OnEducation is Participate. Lately, teachers from all over have been working together to find new approaches to provide quality remote education. Participate's sister company, Participate Learning, presents United We Teach, a global gathering place for educators to share distance learning resources as we navigate these strange times. For these resources and more, visit participate.com/oneducation.
Tell me I'm wrong, and tell me why. Welcome to OnEducation, part of the On Podcast Media Network. My name is Mike Washburn.
And I'm Glenn Irvin. Friends, we have an awesome pod for you today. We will discuss district and state reopening plans for the fall, whether EduTwitter has become toxic, and our guest this week is speaker, educator, and podcaster Noa Daniel.
It's like dueling Noahs.
Yes.
I just realized.
That's true. Noah Geisel. Noa Daniel. Oh.
The dueling Noahs.
The dueling Noahs. Only we think that's funny.
Hey, that's what we're here for. Like, listen, I do this for me, and then we just hope other people think it's cool too.
Oh my god.
So I'm still playing a ton of Minecraft, and I'm venting a little bit. Allow me to vent.
Okay.
I keep dying. I always thought I was really good at Minecraft. And now I'm not so sure.
It's
a little frustrating.
It started to bring some doubts, huh? As far as that gamer expertise.
I'm in my own kitchen. For sure. Because now it's like I'm starting to name my worlds. I'll die eventually. And then hardcore mode and click game start. And it's like, so I'm just previewing the inevitable at this point by naming the world I'll die eventually because, we all know it's going to happen. So what's the point anymore?
Are these ones that you're streaming to, Mike?
So it's like I don't even want to stream it anymore because I want to, like, I've died on stream at least twice now. And it's frustrating because I get into this space where I'm building something really cool and then I die. And it's like, so I played this I've started a survival world because at least there I'm like, things aren't permanent, right? You don't lose everything. You can just respawn. But it's like I'm trying to teach myself how to build a mob spawning bubble elevator thing that goes way up into the air. But it's like I've died like 10 times building the thing because I keep falling or drowning or whatever. And it's like I could never do this in hardcore. How do people build all of these stupid things in hardcore and
not die? Woo. Yeah, just shows
anyways,
you
I'm
how...
a little demoralized. So it's like I started playing World of Tanks because there I get to at least blow things up.
Hey,
and World of Warcraft because there's a game I'm actually pretty good at.
Yeah, you're dominant on that one.
And don't look like an idiot playing it because I clearly am looking like an idiot playing Minecraft. So
that's hilarious.
I don't know. But man, oh man, is it ever frustrating. But I did want to mention, speaking of streams, I guess, a little bit, that coming up real soon, Steve and I, and hopefully you're going to join us and a couple others, are going to join us on a 24-hour live stream for charity, for the Extra Life Children's Charity, Children's Hospital Charity. We're going to do that. It was supposed to be this weekend, the whatever day that is, the 24th, 25th of July, but we've had to postpone it because of another thing that I'll actually maybe plug in a second. But we're going to do it in the next couple weeks and raise some money for charity. So if you aren't following twitch.tv/inside participate yet, you should probably go do that. We stream, Steve Isaacs and I stream every day at 9 a.m. And we cover tons of different things: Minecraft, Fortnite, game design, game-based learning, a whole bunch of cool stuff. Glenn has been on the stream with us a couple times. It's always a ton of fun. So we're going to be doing that This weekend, Glenn,
Oh,
I am doing play-by-play for the first time of a Minecraft esports competition live
wow.
on a stream.
oh, that's super fun.
So
Is it who's competing? Kids?
So it's a NASEF sponsored competition. So they're the runners of it. I'm doing play-by-play. It's going to be streamed live on the Inside Participate channel. So that's, again, twitch.tv/Inside Participate. I will be the play-by-play kind of host. And Kathy Chow Isaacs, Steve Isaacs, and Eric Leitner will be basically like color commentators
cool.
slash people in the field slash whatever, going around and watching. It's a build competition, so it's esports, and I think it's really neat that most people associate esports with like shooting and guns and like Counter-Strike and Overwatch and all of this stuff, but this is esports. It's a build competition, so they will be given a building project, and as a team of 4 players, 4 kids, they will have to build something, and we will do commentary on it while they're doing it.
Wow.
That's streaming Saturday 1 till 3 and Sunday 1 till 3 this week. So
super fun.
Gonna be busy, gonna be crazy. I'd encourage anyone who's listening to mark it down on your calendar, or like I said, go follow the Twitch channel, and then you'll get a notification as soon as it goes live. And then you'll be able to join us and check it out, because I think it's going to be great. Hey, I love this note in the notes. Glenn went shopping. Congratulations, Glenn, on going outside.
I've went outside. I just don't go to public places.
Yeah.
I mean, my only place that we had been going to was Costco because of their mask policy. But now that other people, and now the place that we live, the city that we live right next to, St. Cloud, has imposed a mask ordinance.
Yes.
And so, man, that has made life so great. I even went to Walmart, and I'm going to tell you now, I'm not a big fan of that place. And it was such a pleasant visit to Walmart to actually go shopping and do the things that you needed to go do and buy the things that you need to purchase and been holding out for months from purchasing. Mm-hmm. And then going in there and it being basically great for all of the employees and in all of the customers too, and keeping everybody safe. And I can't wait till this just happens throughout the whole United States. I hope that all the governors really take that into consideration, take it seriously, and that if we all do this, that maybe we can get through this, past this, and really make some headway. But man, I'm telling you, it was a pleasant shopping experience, even though we were buying gardening tools and things that will result in work being done around the house. It wasn't anything fun, but super happy and excited and just glad to be out, even among people and keeping your 6-foot distance. But my goodness, that makes a huge difference.
It does. We spoke with Noa Daniel earlier. You'll hear it in a few minutes about back to school plans and about what it's going to look like in Ontario. And the fact is, we don't totally know yet. But there are a lot of school districts that are either starting there are school districts in the US that are starting like any week now, like in the next couple. There are people that are back into the schools like to get ready already
right now,
for sure. Yeah. And I know that there are regions that are just starting to announce plans for coming back to school, right?
Yes. And the ones that I really like, that people are obviously, this is an amazing part of social media, where districts are posting their plans and then other districts can adapt those plans to fit their specific situations. So there was a district that posted basically a very detailed list of what they're going to be doing, that they're going to be doing distance learning through the first and second quarters, with a plan to return to the buildings in February, which I thought that shows a lot of commitment and dedication and saying, hey, this is what we're going to do. So let's go ahead and do this and do it very well, and keep our kids safe, keep our staff safe. And then they posted the details, like one thing after another, talking about specifically how they were going to adapt distance learning, saying they were going to include instruction 5 days a week, live lessons to supplement pre-recorded lessons. There will be breakout sessions for your special needs students or your English language learners, parent support centers. I mean, there's all of these different ideas that we can all take from and go, okay, this fits with our specific situations in our districts. And I think that that's really is going to be a key, is all of us kind of learning from each other and then adapting and taking each of these little pieces of plans and then applying them at the local level of what fits for our specific situations. There's obviously been in the news that California is going to go a mandatory online learning situation, distance learning, and other states are in the midst of making a decision, and these decisions need to be made, like you just said, Mike, very quickly. There are states, though, that we know of that are going to go full time, every day, face to face. And I mean, there's been some big things as far as in the news. One of them was Florida, I believe, that the governor committed that, yes, we're going to be doing that. And that's so scary, especially when you don't allow localities to make those decisions. A specific county where there might be just a huge outbreak at the moment, where it just doesn't make sense to do that. Where a different county, maybe they're doing well, and yes, it does make sense to go ahead and do that with personal protection equipment and so on and so forth. But I think that sharing of all of these plans and then us collaborating together, we will get through this. It's just that I hate these top-down decisions. When someone says a blanket decision and says, we're all, especially the ones that say we're all going to go back full-time face-to-face, it seems reckless.
And they say it in their Zoom meetings, right? They're not face-to-face themselves.
Protected themselves, exactly. Well, they're in protected too. And so I think we're going to learn a lot in the next few weeks. Several schools are going to be going back in the next few weeks, and I just hope that people are okay. I mean, I hope that the kids and the educators and all their other staff are going to be. We're going to be able to get through this because it's totally scary, and I know why people are having anxiety about it, because it is a scary thing.
In March, I wrote that we're going to see what school districts know what they're doing and which school districts don't, in terms of distance/remote learning, having plans, having contingency plans that previously existed, preparing for the worst, like leadership groups for large, organizations should do. And we did. We saw absolute amazing demonstrations of distance learning and working from home. And we saw absolute failures at the exact same time. And, we're about to see which districts, again, are capable, have capable quality leadership, and which districts don't. And you can tell it feels to me so obvious, the differences between the ones that are really thinking about this and the ones that aren't. My thinking is evolving very rapidly on a lot of this stuff. And certainly as we learn, as it should, as you learn more, as you gain more information, you should be able to have the freedom to change your mind or reflect and rethink things. And I definitely think that no one in the United States, virtually no one in the United States should be going back into a school building right now. Your cases there are... exploding.
Yeah. Yes.
And it's scary. It's scary as, I'd be terrified living in the United. I honestly would. I'd be terrified living in the United States, and I don't blame you, like you specifically. You don't go anywhere, and I don't blame you, man. I wouldn't. I barely leave the house, and we live in an area of Ontario where I think there are like 2 reported cases of COVID in Barrie, city of 130,000 people. There are 2 reported cases of COVID, I think, right now. And in Ontario, I think that there's a couple hundred, and they're mostly in Toronto and in a city called Windsor, actually kind of near where Brian Aspinall lives.
Yeah.
And again, it's mostly specifically related to like one situation or whatever, right? Where there was like a touch point. In Windsor, it's related to migrant workers coming up, like they do every year into Ontario to work on the farms. Happens every year, happens pretty regularly, and a bunch of them got COVID or brought COVID with them or something. And you know, this one plan that has stood out to a lot of people, and we have it. We'll link it in the show notes because it is a great example of what you're talking about, right? The verbal, like literally like posting it out on Twitter for everyone to read. You know, a general idea of what the plan is, and I think the general consensus is that they've nailed it.
Yes.
That. You know, Prince George's County Public Schools in Maryland. I don't know exactly where in Maryland, but they are delaying any decision about returning to an actual classroom until February. And distance learning will continue through the first and second quarters of the school year. And they talk about, providing devices for all their students, providing Wi-Fi for all their students, providing meals for all their students, which was like a huge concern at the start of all of this. I remember tweeting about that as well. And, no plan is going to be perfect. No, every plan, every idea, everything is going to have cracks. You have to go into that without that expectation that everyone is flying, off the seat of their pants. No one knows what they're doing. Nothing has ever been experienced like this before in human history, frankly. So, I mean, I'm willing to give people a break when they come out with a plan like this, and then you have to make a decision on the fly. But I think the thing about this plan and this group and this leadership team is that the roots, the foundation of this plan is strong enough that I trust that when they come across something that they weren't expecting that they have to deal with, that I trust that they're going to make the right decision when it comes to that as well. Yes. And I think that's the big difference, is that there are definitely districts that are going to, half-ass a plan, and then they're still going to have these things that they weren't expecting either. And they're going to have more of them because the plan is so, out that, they're also going to make bad decisions as a response to those situations.
Yeah, no, and that's exactly right, Mike. And I really do appreciate that they do this, and they do this early, and that they share it. And then you're right, that they're going to be able to make adjustments as things happen. And to be able to go ahead and inform your parents and your students and let them start making the decisions that they need to go ahead and start making to make this a reality. And then also your educators start going ahead and giving them the correct professional development so that they do this successfully. So it's not just something that they throw together, that they do it in a way that is going to be successful, even in this kind of distance learning format.
I mean, I hate to say it, but I'm going to say it anyways because someone needs to, I think. This year, students and teachers are going to die. Like, that's the reality of the situation.
Yeah, that's what I'm afraid of.
It's, I mean,
crazy.
And anyone, so if you're willing to say, but our stores need to open, I mean, you need to take a really good look in the mirror, friend. Students and teachers are going to die this year because of this situation and making very, very bad choices. Yes, students will get COVID. Yes, they will pass it on to your grandparents. It's going to happen, friends. Yeah. It's going to happen because no one in very few places in the States are taking this as seriously as they should. It's going to happen. It might even happen like in the best situations. But it is absolutely going to happen in some of these worst situations. It's going to happen. And that is so sad. Kids, we know that kids spread this, and we know that kids will spread it to other kids, and kids will spread it to the teachers. Our Minister of Education said the dumbest thing the other day. He said that, if a teacher is standing at the front of the class teaching all day, they're always going to be 6 feet from their kids, so they shouldn't need to worry. And it's like, you obviously have no idea how teaching works. If you think that all that a teacher does is stand in front of the class the whole day and stay 6 feet away from their kids.
In an enclosed space. Yeah.
Right.
You got to be kidding me.
You're going to have kindergarten kids licking you and hugging you. Well, and it's not. None of this makes sense, and none of it's practical. Everyone needs to still stay home, or people are going to die, and that's. It's really as hard to say as that, but the absolute truth, and no mask, no sign, no poster board, is going to make hashtag segue. Yes. No poster board is going to make that any different, right, Glenn?
No. Yeah, there was let's just call it a controversial topic on EduTwitter this past week.
And it morphed into another controversial topic, which is great. That's all the great controversial topics do that.
It started off basically someone on Pinterest or one of those other places, TPT. I'm not sure where this actually originated at, but someone got the image of it, of a back to school, let's call it elementary, cutesy imagery that you would put up on a bulletin board. That's what this reminds me of.
With the classic TPT clip art and classic TPT fonts.
Yes.
We know what they are.
Little bitmojis of the educators.
Yeah.
And it says, "We can't mask how excited we are to welcome you back." And there's several of these that use the word mask, and the little bitmoji educators have the little masks on. And I get the intent. What was the intended purpose of this as far as the educators? And then they have little masks as the cutout parts, the ribbon as far as on the outside of the bulletin board. And I understand where they were coming from. And of course, this was not well received at all from the majority of educators as far as just the playfulness of such a devastating and actually, like you just finished describing in this last little section, as far as not only are people going to get sick, but people are going to die, and people have died, and people are going to continue to die. And it's not like we're at the end of this. And we've been saying that since, March, April. We're not at the end of this, where it seems again in the United States like we're just at the beginning, and that's horrible to think about that. There's another one that says, "I can't mask how excited I am to welcome you back," and there's a different little image there too. And so anyway, there was a big backlash as far as lots of people just basically saying, "Can we just not do these kinds of things? Please don't make mask activities, fun mask activities." It just seems so obvious, but yet
there were people who defended it.
Yeah, big time. That's the controversy.
There was at least one person that we consider a friend who defended it pretty aggressively, even.
Yeah.
And talked about the idea of doing this kind of stuff normalizes behavior that we want kids to feel comfortable being a part of, like that they live in a world that's surrounded by conflicting voices. Like, so this is the argument for it.
Okay.
And I'm fine making it, whether I believe it or not. This is my style, I guess. But I mean, the argument for it is that there are tons of voices out there that are very much anti-mask.
Yeah.
We know that that's not the behavior we want our students to have, because we know that most of the anti-mask cabal is wrong, like just like factually wrong and scientifically wrong.
Yes.
It's they've politicized it and turned it into a partisan thing where like real men don't wear masks, and I live in America, and America stands for freedom, and I can do whatever the hell I want. So you have that, right? And so all of that is the ridiculousness of the anti-mask campaign. And our students hear those voices. Our students are seeing that stuff. They're not idiots, especially, even younger students are still seeing this stuff on the news and whatever, and certainly hearing their parents discuss it all the time. If we wanted to have our students experience a world where wearing a mask seemed normal, seemed acceptable, seemed like the proper behavior, then we should be creating learning resources and ideas and materials that support the wearing of masks. That is the argument for it. It's a pretty strong argument.
Yeah. No, and I've seen several posts here that basically says normalizing the wearing of the masks seems like a great idea. It just seems so close to home that this is not a fun, laughing matter, But I get both parts of the what you're describing, though, too, Mike, as far as we need our students to obviously wear masks if we're going to have them face-to-face, teaching. And that in elementary school, there's a way of being able to convey that message, and fun, cutesy is one of those ways. But my goodness, it just, I get the argument, because how are you going to tell kids, listen, you might die if you don't wear this? Yeah, it seems like hardcore to say that.
Right.
But yet,
and putting that on a poster with like big block fonts, like let's use like black and white lettering and a big red, letters, and you will die if you don't wear a mask. I mean, that's not the way that is also not the way that you speak to kids.
Sure.
So, if this isn't the way and that's not the way, what's the way that you speak to kids about normalizing mask wearing? Are you just not allowed to turn it into a poster? I mean, is that so I would love, please feel free to like weigh in on this. Tag us in your conversations about it. I'm interested in hearing your opinion. If making a big, mean-looking, scary posters that have no fun graphics and text on them that make it like kid-friendly is not the way, but making like these TPT style with this font that I absolutely hate and these clip art pictures that are just so dumb looking, if that's not the way either, what is the way, and is it that you actually just have a problem with us creating artifacts? Is it only something that can be verbalized? What is the actual like argument against this, other than that, people are dying, and this seems to be making light of that. But where's the line where it's like from informing people, kids, to the gravity of the situation and how absolutely critical it is that they wear their damn mask. Like if you're in school, like they need to wear their masks all day, every day, all the time. And they need to know that. And so where's the appropriate medium in which we tell kids that without being cutesy and without scaring the crap out of them?
It's a really good point. You actually changed my mind a little bit there. So, so good job.
Listen, you got to bring the strong arguments, people. I mean, just Just arguing against this on the face of it is not the way to go. Like, that's not let's have an actual, like, real nuanced conversation about this, because it is complicated. And, if it's just because it's sparking emotion, that's not a strong argument. I'm sorry. Just because you feel crappy about it is not a good argument. You need to do better than that. And, I'm interested in knowing, what the actual arguments against it are, because I think that the arguments for it are pretty strong.
Yes.
I don't like it, and I would never do it. Right.
Yes, I wouldn't.
But
do
I
it
don't.
either.
I don't know the answer to the question. But I'm interested in smart people giving our friends and our listeners some ideas on what they think about all this, because it's complicated.
For sure.
And it's funny because this whole Twitter thread raised up a whole other Twitter thread that we're not going to, like, dig into deep, because it's been talked about a couple times. But this whole idea of being nice, calling out people on social media that are promoting bad behaviors. Some of the tweets in this thread got pretty mean, for lack of better words. Attacking the actual teachers that made it, and calling them, bad people, and, like, really, like, calling them out in personal ways. Like, you shouldn't be teaching if you think this is a good idea.
Wow.
And that's also
hardcore.
not cool. That's a little over the line, in my opinion, especially when you're not making a strong argument, against it, other than this just doesn't feel right.
I'm just waiting for the day, Mike, when people do that to me. I know it's gonna happen. I know that at some point we're gonna say something or post something or retweet something or follow somebody. I just saw that the other day. If you're following Donald Trump, it's like, are you kidding me? I know lots of people that follow
Donald Trump.
That you follow Donald Trump, and what, that doesn't mean anything. It's all of these things where we're like, if you do that, I got an eye on you. It's like, what? You can't. It's like, and like I've talked about before, as far as on Twitter, and I posted, or I created this little blog post. Just because you retweet somebody, that doesn't necessarily mean you are saying, yeah, right on.
Yes.
Sometimes we use the retweet and the like tools, as far as in Twitter, to be able to mark things for ourselves, or to be able to go and go, oh, I got to talk about this later. For us, we have conversations either here on the podcast or offline.
You do this all the time.
Be.
You tag us in things all the time.
Yeah.
Just so we can remember to talk about them later on in the week when we do the podcast.
And it definitely doesn't mean that I agree with it. I just think that it's something that is a great discussion topic, something that we can go ahead and talk about and really evaluate both sides. Just like we just did with that big tweet storm, and we're definitely going down that path. I'm waiting for the day when it'll
happen to me before it happens to you.
When we just get completely blown up because of something that we liked, we retweeted, we said, we advocated for, whatever it might be, and it's my goodness,
please.
Yeah. You're ready though. See, you're ready.
Tell me I'm wrong and tell me why. I mean, that's all I ask. Like, bring an actual argument instead of your feelings.
Yeah.
And I'm fine. I'm fine having the debates. I'm still dying to have, like, Betsy DeVos on the podcast and get her to have, like, an actual, like, conversation and make her answer questions. She wouldn't do it. No one like that would do it. But
they would be amazing.
I think that you can. I think that the people who are using the word, like, shaming are taking, like, that's a real word with real meanings, and I don't think anyone is shaming anyone by calling out poor behaviors and poor practices online. And I think we need to do, like, to be perfectly honest, I think we need to do more calling out of poor practices and poor behaviors online. So, I think the using of the word shaming is a little ridiculous, little much. But I think I'm a professional. I think you're a professional. I think most of our listeners are also professionals.
Yeah.
And I think that you can do this in a professional way without being a jerk. Just don't be a jerk.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a good way to end
that's
that.
actually, yeah, that's the name of this episode. Don't be a jerk.
I feel like it should really, in some cases, be that simple. We're really excited about our next guest. Coming up on the podcast is Noa Daniel. Stay with us. Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. Our guest this week is a teacher and consultant in Ontario, Canada. She's also the host of the P3 podcast. Welcome to OnEducation, Noa Daniel.
Thanks for having me here, gentlemen.
So excited to have you. For folks who may not know who you are, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience, share a little bit about yourself and what brings you to us today.
Sure. So I'm a public school teacher newly. I've been there only 3 years, and I've spent 24 years as an educator. I started my consulting practice a few years ago and called it the name of my project. So it's called Building Outside the Blocks. And then 2.5 years ago, started what's turned into the Mentory, which is a supportive mentorship community for teachers. And I create projects and initiatives for teachers, schools, boards, and communities. And that's what I love to do. So it's a kind of building that you can't always see, but there's a lot of growth and development that comes from it. So that's me.
That's awesome. And you've spoken, you're definitely ramping up your speaking and doing a lot of sessions and stuff like that. And you recently spoke at a TEDx event, which is pretty awesome. How was that experience?
It was magical. It was supposed to be in September, and it got moved. And we were very lucky that it actually came before COVID times. But I had spent the entire summer writing this dream of mine, which was to take the TED stage. And then when we actually got to do it, and I got to talk about the P3 as a podcast, but also as a project that came from my classroom, it was a convergence of many, many wonderful dreams. And I've been speaking a lot since, and I quite enjoy it. I want to do much more of it.
That's awesome. And we're going to get to the P3 podcast in just a second, but I'm curious about, so we're on summer break in Ontario. There are schools actually just about to start going back to school in the United States, but in Ontario, we don't start school again until September. So we're in the middle of our summer break, but I'm curious what teaching looked like for you. We kind of asked this question to almost everyone who's been on the last little while. How was your experience through March, April, May, and June? What did that look like for you? What did your day look like in your classroom?
There were many beautiful parts to it. It was also a struggle. I taught grade 8, so the students are in transition to high school, and many of them were, looking for reasons not to do work. But the most beautiful part were my projects that many of my students were deeply engaged in even before the break. And so we could continue with that. And so it felt like all the community and connections we had built during the year were the platform from which we were able to sustain learning and even increase learning over that time. So there were some really beautiful parts, even though there were some real challenges that I continue to reflect on and hopefully will grow from.
And what do you think it's going to look like for you in September? What do you know about what's going to happen for you and your classroom coming back to school and coming back to teaching potentially in September?
So the truth is we don't know a lot. And the beauty is I'm in this chain of tweets that started by Jason Lay and really is every day tons of information about what's going on in Ontario schools, what's going on around the world in terms of the going back to school. And we don't know. So when our minister talked about hybrid models and planning for different eventualities, I think the reality is that many of us were trying to salvage what we had gained, develop the tools, especially with EdTech, to ensure our ability to create remote learning conditions that are useful and meaningful and aren't just about getting things done, but are actually about teaching and learning. But at the same time, the unknown can be really challenging to navigate. So I'm just trying to ride it and hope for the best. But also the beauty is I have these projects that I know work in remote learning. And that to me is something that will always ground my work. And that's why I talk about it all the time.
Yeah, I mean, my wife is a teacher in your school board's neighbor, the Peel District School Board, and you teach in the York School Board, which is just south of me, which is the Simcoe School Board. So we're all really near each other, quite close to each other. And a guest just the other day, the other week was Jennifer Cazatout, who teaches in the York Catholic School Board. So we're all kind of waiting to hear together what's going to be happening with our kids and with our students and our teaching. And, we're not in the same kind of sense of urgency as, places like the Dakotas and what is it, Nebraska, Glenn, that goes back to school in like a week and a half or something like that.
Yeah, there's quite a few schools that start early, first couple of weeks in August, basically. So some that I've heard that are starting the first week of August. So there is definitely a sense of urgency as far as what is going to happen and how do you do this?
Yeah.
Now that this is a new reality for us.
Yeah, for sure. So Noah, we're both huge fans of the P3 podcast. In fact, so Personal Playlist Podcast is what it's called, I guess, P3. We've both been guests, and it's actually come up. I don't know if we talk about another education podcast more than we talk about yours, to be perfectly honest. It comes up a lot, especially when we're talking about sharing work and sharing podcasts are reflective, are fun, but also, some guests come on our podcast and they say they're nervous or whatever. And I remind people sometimes that I was nervous as hell coming on your podcast. And I've told you that too.
But honestly, like hearing you guys talk about it, I've only heard you speak once about the P3, maybe twice on your show, and it just filled my heart and soul because that's the dream, is that the work, because it comes from my classroom, is that the work is meaningful and it's something that is a critical thinking process and it involves your whole self, but it's also something joyful that you look back on. And the fact that you guys can share in that experience, but also had unique experiences, is what makes it so exciting every week to interview a new person and share their story.
Glenn, were you nervous being on the P3 podcast?
Yes, that was especially just because it's not what I'm used to doing. You know what I mean? And you like the part about kind of identifying music to your journey in your life, that's a conversation on a long drive, to, a long road trip with your spouse or whoever, your other loved ones, and kind of reflecting on those things. And as I think I told Noah, or maybe I told you, Mike, I have no idea. I can't remember this exactly, but I was talking to my wife about this concept. And then that got an amazing conversation kind of going as far as we talked about each other's journeys, but then just, herself, like what songs would she actually pick. And it's a really super unique concept. And Mike and I listened to tons of podcasts, not just in the education realm, but in any realm. And this is so unique. And then I feel like the guests really bring their own take on what is important to them as far as in their lives, and then they combine that with specific music, and then we can all it definitely brings us all together as humans. And I have a question about music in a little bit specifically, but I think that's kind of one of those things, and that's the reason why we probably were so nervous, is we're like, oh gosh, we're like sharing the deep stuff now.
So Noah, talk about the format just a little bit, about the podcast, what you're asking your guests to do, and how you came up with the idea, and then maybe share one or two, maybe if you have some on the top of your head, any moments that you're thinking of from the podcast that really stand out to you.
Sure. There are many moments, but the idea of the podcast, which comes from a project in my classroom, is that my guests, who are all educators, bring a nostalgic, an identity, and a pick-me-up song to the conversation, and their 3-song playlist becomes the place from which, or the conduit through which, they tell their story. And they can tell any part of their story in any way that they want. And that's what's so neat, is you could have 2 educators having the same playlist, and yet the stories are completely different because it's really about you. And I've been creating projects like that all of my life. I didn't know they had a name until 5 years ago, when I randomly said, oh, they're building outside the blocks, but I don't know what they are, and called them Bobs for fun. But what's so cool about it is, I remember the day that I created it. It was originally called the PS2 because it was part of a 3-part project I did over an entire school year with my grade 7. So, it was the PS1 originally, and not because I'm a gamer, but the PS1, PS2, and PS3 were a portrait of yourself, a personal soundtrack, and then what was called photosynthesis related to photographs. So when I proposed this 3 years ago to Stephen Hurley, I literally, as it came out of my mouth, I said, but I would change it from being a PS2 to, a playlist. And I think I want to call it the Personal Playlist Podcast, and I'm going to call it the P3 for fun. And this is my creativity kind of just flowing. And then I create basically from whatever comes out of my mouth, because it's like poetry, and I don't know how it happens, but that's how it works. So I created it then, sitting in a Starbucks, thinking about what that PSs were going to be. And then as I saw my students actually change the project, and they started introducing it with what music means to them. And one student added it, but kind of the community aspect that you were just talking about. Then another student's like, I really like that person talked about what music means to them in their life. So then I ended up adding it to the outline, and I've evolved it a little bit. And I speak about this in my TED Talk, because in public school, oh my gosh, like culturally relevant pedagogy is embedded in this work. People bring so much, like I think about Glenn telling his story and the Spanish songs that are in there, and the Latin vibe and the different things he's able to tell about himself. And, Mike, with you and your story and the evolution of the things that you're passionate about, how you took your own angle on your songs, like that's the part that makes everything personalizing as opposed to personalized. I don't need to know everything about you. You use this platform to tell me what you want to tell me. And that's the thing that makes it so special. So you ask me if there are stories that are memorable, but every story is memorable. And I was making the P3 Turns 3 playlist on Spotify, thinking about how I did most of it from memory. I just picked a song from each person because my memory is tied to narrative, and this is people's life stories, and they wove them through their songs. So some people have really, I've been in shared experiences where they broke down in tears, or they were so deeply moved by something. And so there are magical experiences that happen with people. So they're all memorable in special ways.
Make sure we get the link, Noah, to that Spotify playlist so we can put it in the show notes, because I actually as soon as you posted it on Twitter, I went and listened to it. And definitely scrolled through it to look for my song that
which
you
picked, found right away,
which I found right away, and sent you a DM. I was so excited about it, and I think a lot of people would enjoy listening to that playlist because it's full of really cool music.
Well, I mean, that I actually went through a little bit of an identity crisis thinking about it, like, how dare I curate other people's stories, and they've shared their sacred time with me, and now I'm only choosing one song, and how can I do that? But I did it, and you know what? I loved it. A lot of people have loved it.
Everyone thought it was a great idea.
Yeah. But it's not just the idea, for me, because people have shared these stories with me, I'm imagining each person with every song that unfolds. And I'm spending, extended periods of time with these amazing educators who are making an impact for their students. And that's what I love celebrating. And to add music to it just makes it a well-rounded, funky experience for all.
It's awesome.
So many of the current reality for many of the states are already going to move to just distance learning, at least to begin the school year. It's happening in California, several other states. And one of the biggest concerns when we did that this spring were several educators, through EduTwitter and even locally here, were concerned about just making connections and keeping those connections with their students in a distance learning environment. And I love this quote that you put here, and maybe it's something that educators can take, and maybe you can share some ideas about this, Noah. You have this quote that says, music is a way in and a way out for people, and it's something we can use in the classroom to help students share their stories and themselves with their classes. Is there a way for us to, it doesn't matter what content area or what grade level you're teaching, for us to be able to use music in ways, even in this format where it seems very not personalized, where we are, the distance is actually creating this barrier between educator and student, yet we want to form these relationships. Is music possibly one of the answers for this, Noah?
I wholeheartedly believe that. Throughout COVID, I made a lot of different playlists with my students, one for hope and happiness, one for endurance and understanding, one for a light at the end of the tunnel. Like, we make playlists. But I actually, on Mike's advice, he and I had a conversation a few months ago, and he had said to me, no, you have a TED Talk. Like, why aren't you putting that into clips that are, palatable for people in small chunks that really capture some of the different ideas? And I was like, I don't know. Why haven't I done that? And thinking about coming on the show, I actually got her done. And this morning posted a link to the outline for the P3, as well as, almost an invitation to people in remote learning. One of the things that I learned was that my projects do a lot, but projects with music can do so much more because it adds dimension during a two-dimensional experience. And what's so cool about the P3 as an example in remote learning is, let's say you started your year like that, and you're learning about your students and they're learning about themselves, and they could choose whatever medium they wanted to share and how many people in the class they wanted to share it with, because that's something I offer as a gradual release for people who are not necessarily feeling safe to present, especially in remote environments. So think about how ed tech can be an amazing tool. You could do a podcast, you could make a video, you could do it in lots of different kinds of ways, but you get to groove out in a shared experience where people are building community with each other, for each other, and about each other. And you as the teacher are learning about the child on their terms as opposed to on your terms. So what better way to make remote learning about connection and relationship building than through an invitation like a project like this? But what's funny about it is that when I was making the podcast and choosing an intro song, I came to Sir Duke because in my mind, I was thinking music is a world within itself with a language we all understand. And then I was like, oh my God, I know that song. And then I was playing Stevie Wonder. And what I realized was it's from the album Songs in the Key of Life. And I think that's the one line that I think teachers can walk away with, is that Songs in the Key of Life is a great avenue through which we can learn. So I have projects called History Beats, where students take a song that talks about a historical event, looks it up, does some critical thinking as to what degree the song is accurate based on that information, and then is able to share the tunes and their thinking in a lot of different ways. So, or I have music and lyrics, where people are looking at the poetry and the literary tools in music. So I think there's many different ways and I wonder, maybe that's a blog post that I need to write. Many different ways that we can use music in the classroom to invite students into their learning, to share pieces of themselves, to show some of their social identities and those intersectionalities through music, because where words fail, music speaks, as it has been written. So I think that music is a very powerful tool, and especially in remote learning, to add the audio aspect and the fun aspect and the whole person aspect is always an important part about education. So
why music, though? Like, in general, like, what got you thinking about using music as your, it feels like, as like one of your main teaching tools? One of our other friends of the pod, Michael Bonner, uses music in like all of his teaching as well, and that's what he became known for, and his appearance on Ellen and all of that stuff stemmed from using music in his class to teach. What made you think, like, you could have, like, Glenn and I kind of chose video games, and there are people that choose art, and there are people that do a lot of different kind of have a lot of different entry points into their thing for teaching. Why music?
Well, the truth is it's not really music, even though I love music so much. And it goes back to the quote that Glenn used of mine, is because music is a way in and a way out for people. And my work is about bringing the whole learner into an equation. That's what I do. So music is just a fantastic medium that can feel so personal, but at the same time feel just fun and light and groovy. And it is awesome to learn about people through their music and to hear music in different languages in a classroom. And it really does shake things up. And yeah, I am that teacher who people are like, can you turn down the music in your classroom? And I get that. And I try not to impose my joy on people sometimes, but music is kind of fantastic. So why not? And the music that kids bring in and the things they can talk about are different than any other medium. And it's funny, I have students who have said to me, Mrs. Daniel, I'm a gamer, I'm not into music. And I'm like, okay, pick a Minecraft song. And all of a sudden they're like, oh my God, which song am I going to pick? And then they talk about that. And one of my students unpacked Jeopardy this year as one of his identity songs because he is full of trivia and like a walking encyclopedia. And he felt that the Jeopardy theme song really told a sense of his person. And so even getting kids to explore who aren't into music, where music is, there's a whole media literacy component about that, how music is underlying. Or, I mean, imagine watching an intense scene in a film and changing the music up and it changes the whole thing. So there are layers and layers of how music can be an avenue to so much in learning and in the person.
It's like some murder scene and there's like the chicken dance song or something
in
the
but
background.
Exactly. It's a profound understanding of music being both like an in-your-face kind of experience and a nuanced experience in everything that we do.
Oh, that's funny.
So Noa, for our audience, if they want to connect with you on social media or get onto to be able to find the podcast, where do they go?
So you can find everything at buildingoutsidethebox.com. Information about me. My Twitter handle is @NoahsBobs, coming from the word building outside the block. So it doesn't sound like I'm Noah Bob. No, I'm not Noah Bob. I'm Noah's Bobs. And Building Outside the Blocks is also my Instagram handle. The podcast is on every podcast platform, but I use Spreaker because that's a voice ed thing that we seem to be doing a lot of. And it's great because it gives me access to pretty much everything everywhere. And I love that, the people are like, where can I hear my show about me? And I'm like, everywhere. So definitely start with a person that you know or somebody you want to learn more about, especially the two of you. If that's your entry point into the P3, you can see why it's such a powerful experience.
Noa Daniel, thanks so much for joining us.
Gentlemen, thank you for having me. Glenn, Mike, have a fantastic day.
Thanks for listening to OnEducation. My name is Glenn Irvin. My co-host is Mike Washburn. OnEducation is part of the On Podcast Media Network. You can listen to this show and many others by great educators like Monica Burns, Mike Matera, Tisha Richmond, and many more by visiting onpodcastmedia.com. Want to get in touch with us? Check out our website, oneducationpodcast.com. You can tweet us at oneducationpod. Mike is at Mr. Washburn on Twitter, and I can be found on Twitter at IrvSpanish. You can find us on Facebook by visiting facebook.com/oneducationpod. We're also on Instagram at oneducationpod. If you're enjoying the show and think others would too, we would be thrilled if you shared it with them. Please leave us a rating or review in Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts. When you leave a rating, it gives our rankings a boost. This helps others discover the show. We want to thank our presenting sponsor, Participate, for supporting us. Check out participate.com to learn more about them. Thanks as always for listening. Stay awesome and see you soon.